Call Samantha Smith.
Unit 2365, please respond to a check on the welfare. Caller advised they have not heard from their boyfriend in some time and they received some concerning messages. Unit 2365, I'm en route. Contest chair, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. This was just another day on the job. But today was going to be different. You see, just 2 short weeks prior, I was sitting in the chief's office, signing my resignation letter. I had fallen in love. There were just 2 small hurdles to overcome. 1, I had to move halfway across the country to be with the person I fell in love with. And 2, the person I fell in love with was another woman. This meant I had to come out to my family and tell them something I had known about myself for quite some time. Now, I'm grateful to say, after the shock factor wore off, my family was very accepting. Unfortunately, for my then girlfriend, now wife, she faced a very different scenario. Her father, upon hearing the news that she was with me, another woman, sent her a text message that would shatter her world and enrage me. That text message read, "If we were back in Russia, I would chop you up and feed you to the pigs." Unit 2365, I'm on scene for the last call I'd ever take at that department. My partner and I arrived to a 3-story complex, and we were immediately met by the caller, who was a bit frantic, explaining that they hadn't heard from their boyfriend. A neighbor stepped out who actually knew the caller, so they went ahead to sit with them while we went forward to investigate. We got to the door and we looked around, but we couldn't really see anything. We knocked loudly, but there was no answer. Based on the circumstances, we were given permission to go ahead and make entry. I positioned myself in front of the door as I drew my service weapon and I dropped my shoulder, busting and yelling, "Police! Police!" I was immediately looking into a living room while my partner advanced forward. I turned once behind him and once again, and I was looking down a hallway when I heard the sound, click. Now in law enforcement, that's a good sound. It means my partner holstered his weapon. There was no longer a threat. So I went ahead and holstered my own. I was about to exit out of the apartment when I heard him say, "Hey, come in here." I took a few steps forward and I found myself in the doorway of the master bedroom. It was dark, but there was just enough light peeking through when I saw the body. The young man was laying in the bed. He had a bag over his head with duct tape around the neck, and a tube slithered underneath the tape. That tube was connected to a tank on the floor. The young man was deceased by suicide. 2365, calling dispatch. We've been apparent suicide. Roll medics to my location. Had been a cop for about 4 years at this time, and I'm grateful to say I had never actually found someone deceased on a suicide call. But this was a crime scene. So as I began to exit out of the apartment, I found myself back in that room I originally entered. A piece of paper caught my eye. I went over and I began to read what appeared to be a suicide note. See, that young man described how life in general was just stressful. Everything from work and friends and family. And then it hit me. You remember that caller, that frantic caller who was so concerned about their boyfriend? He was a man. And this young man ultimately described how he lost his life for being rejected by his entire family for being gay. Could have easily been my wife, writing her own suicide letter for what she would endure simply for living authentically and loving me. You know, my wife and I, we faced many moments of discrimination over the years. Everything from awkward stares and verbal arguments to even the need for a protective order for the safety of ourselves and our children. And it is 2021, and we have come a long way since the Stonewall riots in 1969, but we have a long way to go. My wife and I, we share three beautiful children together. Our 11-year-old son. He described to me one day as I stood there proudly at the bus stop that he got into a verbal argument with another student. You see, this student told him that couldn't be me, his mother, standing there. No, that must be his father, maybe his brother, an uncle, or a friend, or simply just any other man. All because I have short hair. Our 17-year-old son, he should never be worried about going to high school and facing a bully just because he's proud to be a young, gay teenager. No person should ever face judgment or ridicule for who they love or how they identify. So I stand here. I stand here in vulnerability, and I stand here in courage. And I implore you all to push past the hate, let go of the judgment, and simply just love one another, because someone's life depends on it. You see, that young man who laid in that bed with that bag over his head and the tape around his neck, his life depended on it. My own wife whose father sent her a text message to say he'd rather see her chopped up and fed to the pigs, her life depends on it. And it could be anyone. Your own mother, father, brother, sister, friend, colleague, or even your own child whose life depends on it. In 2365, I'll be 10-7 for the last time. Contest chair.